Okay guys, so we are going to do fashion faces, or drawing a full front head. And so if you want to follow along with me in your textbook, the Fashion Sketchbook textbook, I am looking at page 87 as I draw. All of chapter 4 is really great, and the whole chapter talks about how to get the proportions right for a face and head and all the little details about how to do it in a lot of different angles. But I am looking at page 87, and that is exactly what I am going to use to come up with my proportions right now. So we're going to want to start with, we've got sketchbook paper, not notebook paper, not lined paper. This is a page in your sketchbook that is 9 by 12 or 11 by 14. That's what I want you to use. I've got a mechanical pencil. That's what I strongly suggest. Some extra leads for my mechanical pencil. I've got a good eraser. It's broken, but it's still good. And I've got even my fancy tiny point eraser that, see, I can like get fine erase points. A lot of erasing happens, especially in the way that I sketch. I get really sketchy and I draw on there a lot, and then I'll take away as I decide what I don't like. So these are the materials. I've also got my drafting ruler, but honestly I just did a demo for myself and I didn't pick it up once. I didn't really use the ruler. With faces, I kind of eyeball it. There's definitely a set of proportions we're going to follow, but it's more about how it looks and if it seems organic and if it seems like it's working. So it's not so much about measuring, unless you're just not getting it, and then it might help you to break out the ruler, so it's possible. So we're going to want to draw really large. Definitely when we end up doing our fashion croquis, where we've got, you know, a figure where her head's this big and her body's this long, her face is going to be tiny. So what we want to do first is get really good at drawing faces big, because that way we'll actually be able to practice the details. When it's really small, it's actually more difficult to get everything in the right place. So we're going to practice really big to start. For this first one that you do, I want you to take up the whole page. Later, when you do the assignment, if you want, you can do 2 on a page, so, you know, about 5 inches, and then, you know, on the other 5 inches. But I strongly suggest you do 1 per page. I promise you, you'll never fill up your sketchbook. I rarely fill up a sketchbook, and I use them all the time. So use the paper, you're not saving it for anything. Go ahead and take the big space and make your head really big, okay? It's just gonna be easier when you're figuring it out. Later, you can get smaller as you practice, but this first time especially, let's get big. So I start with like a big oval, okay? And I'm trying to press really lightly, so you can barely see this. But again, you guys know, or have probably seen, my problem is I press too hard and it's really impossible to erase. So especially this, I know kind of none of this is gonna stay. So I'm just going really lightly to start. So a big oval. And if you see, it's really not like an egg shape necessarily. It's not sort of pointed on the ends. I'm kind of starting to make it into what feels like a face. So it's sort of square, you know, up here and up here. But it's a sort of circle, a sort of square, an oval, a face-shaped oval. Go for that. And then what I'm going to do right away is I'm going to find the center point down the middle. Again, if you can't do this, use your ruler and just measure it. But I'm going to kind of eyeball it. So I've gone right down the center, if you can see that really light baby line. And then I'm going to go the center crossways as well. So I'll bring this to you so you can see. But it's just a really light line, so that I've marked my axis here. So everything's going to hinge around this. So your eyes are actually here, right in the center, which seems, you know, maybe different than what you'd expect. But remember that our whole head is actually, a lot of it is our hair as well. So we're actually going to only be really kind of putting the face in this tiny section here. And a lot of this is forehead and actually what we see of our hairline. So eyes are going to go on that dead center line. And so The eye width, this is kind of something where at first maybe just feel it out. I have a habit of making my eyes really big. It's just my style. Some people do it a little bit differently, but that's kind of how I do it. So, you know, feel free to tweak slightly. But I kind of keep it where the width of my big eyes, I'm going to keep a distance of one eye between them. Okay, so I'll show you what I'm talking about as I do it. So I'll start roughly, and I'm going to come over like a little bit, right? And I'll start roughly kind of giving this eye shape, right? We kind of have an idea of what an eye is shaped like, right? It's kind of round on the top, maybe a little flatter on the bottom. And I'll come over here and I'll do the same thing. And this is where, even for me, symmetry is hard. Like you could already see right away, this one's bigger. But this is hard for everybody, so don't stress it. That's why I'm going really lightly at first. I might end up keeping one line and not keeping another, you know, as I'm going. So here I've got my eyes, and the distance between them is actually maybe looking a little wide now that I'm looking at it. It looks like it's a little more than one width, you know, so if I imagine, what I mean is if I've measured that and it's like about 1 1/4, and this one's about 1 1/4, and the width between them is like a little bit over, you know, I'm just feeling like it's seeming a little big. And again, I can adjust this, but I might just come back over and pull it, you know, more from that center there. You know, again, I'm just mapping out at this point, but that's where the eyes are going to roughly go. And then the next set of measurements that we're going to get is about halfway from this point. Okay, so this is the halfway mark where the eyes go, okay? And the halfway between the eyes and where the chin is here, we're going to make that, let me see. That seems about halfway. And again, I do this pretty intuitively, but you could always pop out your ruler. It's 3 3/4 inches, and I've marked it down maybe a little farther than I should. I could go a little bit higher. I mean, we're talking tiny amounts of difference, but this is where too you're just going to feel it out. And even there, if I erase that, gosh, I can still see my line even though I was trying to press so lightly. So I've got a line now about halfway through, okay? And again, if you're following along on page 87, you'll see this. So this is halfway through, but where they're showing that you actually put the nose and the mouth is a little bit higher than this and a little bit lower than this. So really the nose might go on this line, and the mouth might go on this line. So I've actually created 3 here. In the book they kind of just show you doing these, but it's easier for me to just look for the center and go a little above and a little below. Again, typically when I'm actually drawing, I'm not even going to make all these marks. I might just see it and eyeball it, but for right now, let's mark it. You can erase it later. So our nose is going to go on this place here. And the way they kind of start that nose out is really super simple. Just think about almost as wide as the middle of the eyes. You're kind of going to drop straight down. Your nose is going to be sort of the width between those 2 eyes. And you're just going to kind of make a little triangle for now, right? A little indication that this is where the nose is. Oh, and I already made it a little too low. So look, I kind of not paying attention. And see, I went to my center line. So let's actually go to that higher line that I marked. There we go. So a little triangle kind of indication there on that line that's slightly above the center of this bottom portion. And then they've got like a little bit of shadow that'll come out here. And I'm just kind of bringing down a line right now that's sort of imagining it's sort of the eyelid right above the eye and kind of coming straight down. And that one went a little wonky, but I'll probably erase it later, so I'm not too stressed about it. So that's my kind of indication of nose. You could start at this point drawing what the nose, you know, really ends up being. It usually has a little bottom kind of tip, and imagine that your nostrils are in there, and you've got sort of your bit that wraps around your nostrils. Again, I'm pressing way too hard at this point since I'll probably erase this, but I kind of want you to see. So you can start imagining. That's sort of what the nose looks like when you're looking at it from head on, because you're seeing the shadows of like around our nostrils here, and you're starting to see like that would be like if you were looking up our nose, right? That would be there. And then you've got that cute little point of your nose. And then you can imagine the like cute round part that would get shiny is like here, right in the center, which as you can see, it's kind of what these lines are pointing to. Okay, it's really just thinking about light and shadow. We'll start talking about that now, which we haven't really talked about it yet, but that's how we're going to start thinking about the face. It's how shadow is hitting different parts of the face to create lines. And honestly, we want as few lines as possible. The less that we draw, the better. And I'll say that a lot, you know, just minimal lines, as few lines as you can get away with. So that's why I say I'll erase a lot of this, but I like to sometimes map out where shadows would be, where folds would be. So this again, these are our nostrils around here. That's our cute little tip of the nose. This is some shadow that kind of forms that bridge of the nose. So we can start thinking about that nose, but again, I'm not stressing it super huge at this point. Let's go ahead and get our lips in there. So the lips are actually right under the nose. A big mistake that I see often when people are drawing is, say like here they've got the nose and they'll put the lips like way down here. That would never happen. If you really look at a face, look at your own face, look in the mirror. You've got that cute little space between your nose and where your lip starts, that little divot, right, that gets sweat in it. Your nose kind of directly leads into your mouth. So you're gonna have your mouth pretty high up. And so basically this line that I drew that's right under the midway point of the bottom half of the face, that's where kind of like the opening of your mouth is gonna live. But the top of your lip is actually gonna be right at that halfway point of this bottom. So I'll show you what I mean. So again, same, this is gonna kind of start with kind of like a little heart shape. And again, the mouth is about as wide as the nose, maybe a little wider, right? You can go a little wider on that. Some people, again, make their mouths really tiny. I'll go a little bit wider. So again, I'll usually kind of echo what I've done in the nose up here, right? So this comes to a point, so I do the sort of opposite of the point there. And then I'm going to come down and do my little kind of heart shape. I probably pronounced that a little bit more than I need to, but you can just do a little point, right? Your little heart shape for the top, and then a swoop, maybe a big fat swoop for the bottom. And again, we'll play with this mouth, right? This is very much, she looks like a doll baby right now, right? She's really exaggerated with her sweetness, so we'll probably play with that. But the point right now is to get them marked in the right spot. So if you can see this line down here, look, that would be like the opening of her mouth. And then between the nose and the mouth seems very connected. This shape kind of echoes that shape, right? You can even at any point kind of draw in that little shadow there. Or maybe I'd even put it on the other side actually, depending on where my light's coming from. And this is something we can talk about now. When you draw, even from the dead front, you always want to imagine where your light source is. Like if the light is shining directly at them, you know, you might actually have shadow on both sides of the nose, shadow on both sides of the bridge because it's really harsh. Usually when I draw, just because it looks a little nicer, it's less shadow, it's less harsh, and it's how you might light a nice photograph. I draw imagining the light's coming from one side, right? So if all my light, like in this case, I just know the way I draw. I always draw where this side is dark. So the light's coming from this side, the light's coming here. So I would see less shadow on this side and more shadow over here, okay? So in that case, again, maybe, well, actually, then I'd still be in the right case because if my light was coming here, it would almost, I'd still have that shadow on this side where that divot is as opposed to this side. I think that still works, but I'll go ahead and imagine my light's coming from here. So what is happening is it's hitting that bit of flesh and creating a slight shadow on the inside of that divot. And you wouldn't see the shadow on this side. In fact, the light would hit it on that side. But I'll keep going. That's too much. So we've got our eyes marked, we've got our nose marked, we've got our mouth marked. We can actually go ahead and drop the ears in at this point too. And the ears, you just want to make a subtle indication. Do not try to draw an ear. I mean, it's way too unnecessary. But they're going to hit right where the eyes are and kind of go down to where the nose is. So I just do, I mean, we're talking like that, just an indication of an ear, something like that, so that she basically has something when I go to draw her hair to like tuck her hair behind. And again, every ear is a little different. Sometimes the lobes are connected, sometimes not. So, you know, but just a little indication of ear just to show you where it is. And then we'll move along and start kind of fleshing things out a little bit more. So we can start kind of tweaking the eyes at this point and really get them how we like them and get them in a good spot, right? So if we like where they're beginning, if you see the two kind of insides of the eyes are kind of lining up with the outsides of the nostrils here, I kind of like that. So again, the top is usually pretty round, and again, I make big giant eyes. You could definitely adjust yours, right? And I might imagine, and again, we all do makeup, right? We know how it ends. You kind of come out, imagine you're doing a cat eye makeup for yourself, right? So you can come out in this pretty swoop here for the top lid, right? Now the bottom isn't going to be as round, right? That would be super exaggerated. So you can make that a little bit, oh, maybe that's too much though. Again, here's symmetry. So let's say I can already see this one's more droopy and this one's straight across. At this point, I could kind of pick one and make them both like that, or I could still make a change, meet somewhere in the middle. I'm already starting to press pretty hard, so I'm gonna have to watch myself. Maybe I'll take them both away and kind of decide how I want. Maybe going a little bit later. That looks a little more symmetrical, right? I still see some issues, but man, eyes are hard. Our eyes are hard to get perfectly symmetrical. I usually just keep tweaking until it feels right. And we can go ahead and put in the details of the eyes at this point. We could do our big fat iris, right? So imagine that there's a circle in here that's going to go beyond the lid that you can't see. So that's the shape you're trying to get, right? A big fat circle. And again, look at my giant doll baby eyes, right? I make such big eyes. But again, it's easier when it's big because you can see all the details. So there we go. So I'm looking for quasi-symmetry there, close, right? And then that's like the color part of our eye. And then we want to do our pupil, and you could do that like tiny. You could do it really big. Again, it gives it a different feel, right? If you want this like doll, or if you want her little pinpoint pupils. Definitely with this, try to make your pupils in the same spot, right? So like I'm going to draw lightly, but if you put your pupils here, right? That's her pupil, imagine. Make sure you do it the same way on this side. So that now she's looking over that way. I don't know if I actually like her looking over that way. I probably will just have her looking straight ahead. Okay, but you can play around with the pupils, right? You can get fun with it. And so same, I'll probably have the pupil so that it's not in the full frame, right? So that it's kind of tucked into the top of the eyelid, and I'm going to aim for placing them in the right spots. Sometimes I have to kind of look too. Looks like, see, this one is a little bit lower, so I can tweak that. I feel like something about the pupil, there's something in the eyes, the whole look of a person is in that pupil, right? That kind of gives you the whole feel of it. So it is really important to kind of take your time getting those pupils right. So say I feel pretty comfortable about that. Again, that could tweak. So imagine this is the color part of my eye. This is the dark part. I could even and I'm trying to just be lightly, but just so we get the gist right now, that this would be my dark pupil. I feel like she's kind of looking up. I'm going to have these pupils come a little bit lower because she looks a little funny looking up. So something like that. So she's got a little pupil. And now the way I've kind of shaded it, it's almost like she's got shadow down at the bottom, which is fine. But there we go. So she's got some start of some eyes going there. So we can start mapping out the rest as well. So this shadow that we indicated earlier, which is really light, it's kind of just like imagining sort of the top of the eyelid, that shadow right in here. So I can make that a little darker. I'm serious about this. I like that. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in. And I bring it down and that becomes the bridge of my nose, you know? So the eyebrow area, the eyelid area, that becomes the shadow for the nose. But this isn't actually where our eyebrow lives. This would be more like, you know, a subtle indication of her eyelid. Her eyebrow would be a little higher, right? You'd come up and just like you're painting on your own eyebrows, kind of come up from that point. And you can decide what sort of arch you like, right? You can come up again, and it could be a little rounded, or she could have a little arch. Again, eyebrows are very personal, so it's whatever you want to do. Ultimately, just like we would do our own eyebrows, you can imagine like taking the hairs from that point and kind of drawing them in a little bit. But honestly, again, by the time you do your tiny, tiny croaky head, you're not even going to be able to really see details on the eyebrow. So really just one line to indicate shape is probably going to be all you need. So now we've got some nice looking eyes. She's got some expression, right? She's got a little eyelid indication. We can give her maybe a little eyelid. Oh, I think I put that in the wrong spot. Sometimes I put the pencil down, you know, and it doesn't go in the right spot. It's okay. There we go. Little eyelid shadow over there. Oh, she looks somber now. Something about that heavy set eye. So now we know we like this line for the shadow, and I've already decided my light's coming from here. So I can go ahead and erase this line. I don't even want it. And see how I still see that she has a nose. I don't need to see both sides of the bridge of her nose, really. I could come down with this a little bit more like that. You know, I could give her a little more shadow, or like a little more, if I wanted, see, to create a little more on the bridge of her nose there. And then I have a little too many, you know, again, definitely less is more with your lines. So there we go. I have a little shadow now. She has an indication of the bridge of her nose, but you don't need to draw it all the way. You don't need to connect the two pieces. You don't want to. That would be too much. It would seem too harsh, too much, you know, harsh light on her. So we can go ahead and start kind of fixing the rest of her nose and deciding what lines we let it keep. I have a lot of lines going on here. I don't need them all. So I can come in and say, I want this, right? I want this cute little outside of her nostril. And I want a little here, but maybe I don't even want as much over there. Maybe because, again, I'm having my light come from over there, I can just take away some of that. And see how that's how this fine point eraser comes in handy, by letting me erase. And then honestly, like this circle that I drew, I obviously don't need it. I was just indicating where the cute little ball of her nose is. But I can do that just by kind of giving a little shadow right there. And you can still see my old line a little bit, so that creates like a little more shadow. But now she has a cute kind of little nose. I feel like it's a little crooked that way. Let me see if I can. I think it's because I'm drawing in front of the camera, so I can't really get my arm in there like I normally would. I'll just kind of keep tweaking that. But maybe her nose is just a little crooked, you know? Maybe she's just like a little funny that way. But I feel, you know, satisfied with this slight indication of a little nose and slight indication of shadow. She probably doesn't even need as much as she has. I could have definitely gone less. And if you look in the tutorials in the book, you'll see a lot of people do even less than that. But since we're going so big, I'm going to put in the details. So I've got a little nose. I've got her little divot there that connects to her lip. Now let's make these lips pretty. So let's give this, I feel like she's got quite the heart shape there. So we can pull this out, again, a little wider on the top, right? Give her a little smile. And I'm giving her this subtle heart on top. Notice it doesn't come to a point. It's rounded. It matches the round of the nose. It matches the round of that divot. Don't just give her like a harsh point for lips. Again, unless it's your style. I mean, obviously some people do that. But I think this is more realistic. So it's really that too. It's kind of deciding what you want. If you want a realistic look or if you want a more exaggerated look. And so for the bottom, I've kind of drawn this, you know, as a sort of circle here. But let's make it a little more square, which is again more realistic. So she probably has like a flat kind of underlip at the bottom. And then kind of comes down there. So again, imagine I can kind of erase away and then I don't even need to, again, you can leave some of this unconnected. There we go. I'm erasing because I've got such dark lines. But there we go. She's got a pretty little mouth. And then what's really going to seal the deal on this is sort of giving her that lip part, right? And let's go ahead and slightly mimic the shape that we have up here, right? So don't just draw a straight line across, which is kind of what I have now. Draw a subtle sort of right? See how it's kind of just, I mean, just little humps that are sort of mimicking what's up there. It looks a lot more natural. It looks like two big pieces of fat meat touching each other, which is what lips are, right? You've got a round, succulent bottom lip, and it's kind of pushing up against that top lip, right? So I think it really helps just to give it some character and depth and sense of reality. Let me try to erase some of my very hard lines underneath. And I'll draw back in what I like. There we go. So she looks like, you can kind of start to see that one lip could part slightly from that other. You could even have a slight opening where her lips are parted and she's super sexy. But I think this feels like it's getting closer, right? Closer every day. Let's see what else we might need to do at this point. So we've got everything marked. Again, so eyes are at a halfway point of our oval. Nose is at a little above half of that, right? Nose is out here. Lips are out here at a little below half of that midpoint. I'm going to say nose, eyes. So midpoint, the nose is above it. The eyes are, or I'm sorry, not eyes, the, the lips are below it. The ears go from eyes to nose. Okay, indicated there. And we've got everything kind of in the right place. And so now let's imagine her forehead. So we've got all this space. So definitely another halfway between this top portion, right, the top of the head, is going to be where her forehead kind of ends. So at that halfway, at that mid point there. And so we can start indicating her hair, or imagine where hairline would be. So it would be all of this up here would be her hair, and that would be her bit of forehead. So just like they do in the book, I could give her a side part, and what I'll do is imagine that it's starting from here and swoops down, and then her other bit of hair might come here and swoop down, and I'm kind of in this point tucking it behind the ears. So this is why, whoops, having the ear kind of helps you know where to stop with the hair. And so on this side, I'm going a little bit bigger than my oval. I'm kind of feeling it. I'm trying to feel what feels right for her head. And then here, same, I'll go maybe a little bit larger. And this is definitely a time where you could draw some extra lines, sort of hairlines. We can have where her part kind of meets. Maybe she's got, some strays and a couple of little extra, right? And these are just kind of, imagine, like shadows, but it's giving her indication of hair. I already feel like I did too many, but a few. It just takes a few. Imagine when you're a kid and you're doing those like Barbie doll coloring books and they just have a few lines for her hair. That's, I feel like, the same way that I end up drawing. And then I just get a feel for if her head feels like symmetrical. I kind of gave her an extra bump. It's like she has a bump it over there, but I think it's fine. And then instead of, right now she's got like a super short haircut, but imagine it's tucked behind her ears and it comes out actually. And maybe it even comes out bigger on this side, Maybe she's got a cute little sort of half bob, a little bit longer, shoulder length. That's what the shoulder length hair. And so we can get back to the hair, but that's a good kind of start. So we've established, here's our forehead, eyebrows, eyes, nose, lips, everything in the right space. Here's always where I finish. I don't start doing this till the end. Notice she's like got this big fat chin. This is where I start looking at my shape and deciding how I want to shape up her actual face. We've given her a really big oval face, but what I really want to do is imagine that her chin, and they show in the book that you've got kind of this like circle here under her mouth that meets her chin. And then you've got these cute kind of circles that form from the eyes to the mouth, right? So we can start to use this shape to actually make our face. We don't need most of this. These would be like jowls, right? And some people have faces that have jowls, but I'm going to take hers in a little bit. So I can start literally cutting some of that out and giving her a smaller face, right? Now she looks very gaunt. So now I come and start shaping it up. And notice how I turn my paper to kind of make it feel the most fluid. So to start kind of making sure I'm doing this right, I'm probably gonna erase some lines that I've got in here so I can really see. And because this is sort of my last step, this is where I'm really just going to kind of feel it out, and I might have to keep like drawing and drawing and drawing to get those lines right. I feel like her chin is just honestly feeling really long. Again, not that we haven't seen girls that look like this, but I want her chin to be a little shorter. So again, I'm going to come down. I'm imagining that's her big pretty cheekbone. So I'm cutting down. And let's shave off a little bit of chin. And now I've created this big like shadow here, which is why it's so annoying that I press hard, but I'm gonna try to erase it and then draw the line a little nicer now that I can I've mapped it out, right? I've mapped it out with all of my roughness. There we go. Not pretty. I feel like she's still got, you know, some substantial cheeks, this chick, right? Like she's still got a big cheeky face, but a little bit softer of a chin now, not quite as long. See, I really just took it up like 1/4 of an inch, but I think it makes a difference. And then again, the question here, just like the eyes, is this symmetrical? I feel like this jaw is kind of hanging a little lower. So I could make that adjustment. But symmetry's hard. It's okay. I feel like she nips in a little bit here. And luckily, when you do this for your tiny croaky face, it'll be this big. So really, I usually don't even stress this much getting the details just right because it's so small, so you don't even have room to stress it. Okay, but I feel like she's got a pretty cute face. She's got some cute cheekbones. She's got some shape here. I like her. I feel like she's turning out pretty well. And then the last thing I do that really ties it together is I can drop that neck. And so her neck is going to start kind of like where the ends of her eyes are, a little bit on the inside. And you could just drop that straight down. I did a wiggly line, but imagine that you're going to do it straight and just drop that straight down. So it looks like her neck is wide, but in reality it's really not. I'll drop that a little straighter. There we go. Give her a slightly thinner neck. She's kind of alien-like. But again, imagine if I'm cutting my paper off here. That looks pretty good, right? It's sort of coming, you can imagine that neck coming from the base of her head, right? Like this is where her cheeks wrap around, but the base of her head, that's gonna just follow it up really nicely. It looks like I accidentally erased her ear. So I'll go back in. And now, if I like my lines, I can really darkly draw them, right? And we'll talk about this when we do more of our final. But I can even come in with a marker and decide which lines I'm going to really darkly draw at this point. I'll just mention it because we've been talking about sort of light and shadow. Something that is always really important is that the head is obviously going to create quite a bit of shadow on this neck, right? And because I know I'm putting my shadow more towards this side, toward the right side, I could even like, at this point, I mean, I'm just like kind of doing some crosshatch shadow for her neck. That's probably a little rougher than I want, but just a little bit of indication of shadow here. Later when we're painting or doing marker, that's a good place to kind of put in a little bit, is always right under the neck. And because I'm such a crazy and I press so hard, I've always got so much graphite on my paper, so I can literally just rub it in. But she's got a little bit of shadow here, and let's go ahead and see how her hair is just this big open point, so we can do some more kind of hair lines. You can even have some like come off, right, to show like a little bit of movement of her bob haircut. So this is my full frontal fashion face. I'm going to come in and darken those eyes as I stare at her a little more so that you can really see. If you were going to do something like adding eyelashes or makeup, you could do it on this top line again. Like I mentioned earlier, it's like imagining you're doing a cat eye. So you can kind of extend it. You could do something like that, give her just a few little eyelashes, or you could literally just make the line thicker, right? There, see, that kind of looks nicer even maybe than that. It's just a different look, right? So I can start to give her some almost like eyeliner. Give her some darker bits, and then let me darken in this pupil. And I'm leaving a little white so that she's almost got like a little indication of some light hitting the round part of her eye. But she's looking a little cuter now, right? And I could come in and say, okay, I want her eyebrows darker. Maybe you draw the individual hairs, or again, maybe you just draw in a thicker line, right? Either way could be fine. And again, just like in reality, when you do your own makeup, you could aim for symmetry with the eyebrows, but it's always easier said than done. I could kind of tweak the shadows that I'm kind of creating with her eyelids to give her a slightly different look. Maybe I want her to have not such a heavy looking eyelid. I want her to look youthful and fresh, something like that. I could come in and do like, I don't know, shadows. I don't like that, I'm erasing it. You could keep tweaking this indefinitely, for sure. Or you can just wait until you added color and end up making choices with light and shadow with your color instead of doing it at this point. But I think we've got everything marked out and sort of in the right place, and this is a good starting point, if you can kind of see. And then just to show you, so even the one that I did a second ago before I did this actually looks pretty similar. I feel like her nose is wider, but I did nearly the same girl with a wider nose, maybe bigger lips. I like her too. I like them both. They're different. They're related though. They look like they're sisters. So I'll post photos of these, and obviously you can go back and watch the tutorial, and you could look in the Fashion Sketchbook textbook to kind of see where things line up, where you're hitting those points. But this is what I want you to do, is to just play around and kind of flesh out one big giant face that takes up a whole piece of paper.